It pretty much goes without fail. Even though I tell you you don't have to sit in the same seats, everyone always seems to go to the same seat regardless. Well, I know you want to sit so you're not in front of the window. I know. But I was watching that with good interest thinking, they're going to do it again. All right. Mr. Hawbaker, cross-examination.
Just briefly, when you went to that apartment in Alta Vista, your assessment was ultimately that CPR would not be necessary, correct?
Correct.
As far as further assessment, did you do an examination of the body to determine if there were any cuts or lacerations on the body?
No.
Did you do an examination of the body to determine if there were any bruises on Sterling?
No.
Were you able to determine if there were any broken bones on Sterling?
No, my job there that I felt that day was whether or not to start CPR on him or not, and I did not start CPR.
Understood. And the blanket that Sterling was in was moist or wet, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, the position of the chair as you entered the room, that was State's Exhibit 2. When you first entered the room, that was the first time you'd ever been in that room, correct?
Correct.
So you would have no knowledge as to when that chair was put in that position.
Correct.
Or the swing, I should say.
Correct.
Or who was responsible for putting it in that position.
Correct.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Once you observed that there was no assisting Sterling, you knew at that point not to touch or move anything, is that right?
Correct.
Why is that?
Because I waited for law enforcement to come.
Fair to say at that point that Sterling was crime scene.
Correct. That's why I called the sheriff. That's why I called back into dispatch and requested the sheriff and another medical examiner.
That's all I have.
Recross. Can this witness be excused?
Yes.
You may step down. State's next witness.
The state is called Toni Shatek.
Go ahead. Is your mic on, Aaron?
Is that better? Okay. When I'm speaking, I'll make sure, or she'll make sure that I have it at my mouth. No, thank you.
Please stand. Promise testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Have a seat.
If you could please,
Just a minute. Yeah, anytime you can't hear, please give my attention or the court attendance and we'll do what we can, okay?
ready, Your Honor?
Proceed.
Thank you. Ma'am, if you could please state your first and last name for the record and spell them both, please.
Tina Shatek, Tinashatek.
And Tina, how old are you?
I am 58.
And where do you live?
I live on a farm with my husband by Elma.
And do you have any children?
Yes, we have 4 adult daughters and 7 grandchildren.
And how old are your grandchildren?
12, 10, 7, 5, 4, and 2 one-year-olds.
Okay, so quite a group.
Yes.
Tell me, ma'am, how are you employed?
I work for the United States Postal Service.
And what position do you hold with the United States Postal Service?
I'm a rural carrier,
How long have you done that?
22 years.
In 22 years, has the Postal Service where you worked ever not delivered mail?
No.
Is today the first day?
Yes.
And you're
That I
here
know
and,
of.
and you're off.
Yes.
Okay. Where do you deliver mail in Chickasaw County?
I deliver mail in Elma and Alta Vista.
Can you describe the town of Alta Vista, please?
It's just a small town, 300 people,
And how far away from Alta Vista do you live?
6 miles.
Now, in your lifetime, ma'am, have you ever had any experience or training as a first responder?
Yes, 20 some years ago.
And what was your first responder training?
What was it?
Yeah, what did it consist of?
Just to go on calls.
As an EMT?
Yes.
And did you maintain your EMT certificates?
No.
And why was that?
I was too busy with the children.
And that's the 4 children?
Yes.
And the husband?
Yes.
And the farm?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever, prior to August 30th, 2017, met the defendant Cheyanne Harris?
No.
How about her live-in boyfriend, Zachary Cohn?
No.
Their son, Sterling?
No.
Their baby, Nala?
No.
Are you familiar, or were you familiar, on August 30th, 2017, in your duties as a mail carrier with the apartment complex located in Alta Vista at 107 South Hilltop Avenue?
Pardon me?
That was a poor question, wasn't it? Let me start again. As a mail carrier, did you deliver mail to 107 South Hilltop Avenue in Alta Vista?
Yes.
And that's an apartment complex,
Yes.
right? Can you describe it for the jury?
There's 3 separate apartment buildings, but all the mailboxes are on the street. So if I don't have a package, I don't need to go into the building.
And how many apartments are in each apartment building?
4.
So there's a total of 12 apartments in 3 buildings.
Yes.
Had you ever, prior to August 30th, 2017, been inside apartment number 7?
Yes, before they were there.
So not when the defendant lived at that residence.
Correct.
Do you know Toni Friedrich?
Yes.
How do you know her?
I used to babysit her children when they were little.
Okay. Now I want to turn your attention to August 30th, 2017. Were you working that day delivering mail?
Yes.
And were you delivering mail in Alta Vista?
Yes.
Was that your route?
Yes.
Now about 1 o'clock that afternoon on August 30th, 2017, where were you physically located?
Right by the apartment building.
And what happened then?
I saw Toni driving fast down the street with her flashers on, and so I turned to stop. She turned around, came back, stopped by the stop sign, and I pulled up to her to ask her if I could help her find her way, because I knew she was looking for something.
Well, let me ask you a couple follow-up questions. When you said Toni, who were you talking about?
Toni Friedrich.
And you said she appeared to be lost or looking for something?
She was looking for something, yes.
And how could you tell that?
Because she flew back, she went one way, came back the other way, and then stopped there.
Did you know that she was an EMT or a first
Yes.
responder? So what did you do?
I pulled up to her and asked her if I could help her, and then she was on the dispatch, and they told her she was looking for apartment 7, and I pointed it to her. She wasn't far from it.
Why did you do that?
Because I wanted to help.
Okay. And what happened next?
Toni went in, and I went around the block and parked, and I went inside.
And where did you park in relation to the apartment complex containing apartment number 7?
It would be on the north side of the building.
And did you get out of your vehicle?
Yes.
What did you do?
I walked inside.
Inside what?
Inside the apartment.
And would that be apartment number 7?
Yes.
What did you see when you walked inside apartment number 7?
I saw Toni kneeling down by the baby.
And so did you enter into the back room of the apartment?
Yes.
Prior to entering into the apartment itself, did you see anybody else around?
The parents were outside when I arrived.
And what did you observe about the parents?
They were just very quiet. No tears.
Did you see any children outside?
Yes.
What did you see?
Their daughter.
And can you describe the daughter?
Dark, kind of dark complected. Cute little girl.
Do you remember what she was wearing?
I do not.
And did you make those observations before you went inside the apartment or after coming out?
Before.
And then you said you went inside the apartment and went to the back bedroom, correct?
Yes.
And you saw Toni kneeling by the child?
Yes.
Did you see the child?
No.
When you were making that observation of Toni, what was she doing?
She was kneeling by the baby, and I went up to her to ask her what I could do to help, and she wasn't performing any emergency care,
What did that mean to you?
that the baby was probably gone.
When you were in that room and you saw Miss Toni kneeling by the baby, what was she kneeling by that the baby was in?
A swing, a baby swing.
Can you describe where the swing was in the room?
It was up against the wall, facing the wall,
When you were in that room, how did the room feel?
very warm. There wasn't air.
Was there air moving?
No,
How did the room smell?
like dirty diapers.
Can you describe how strong the smell was?
Strong.
What do you mean?
Strong as in too strong for the children to be in there.
Was it obvious when you walked in the room, that smell?
Yes.
Did you see the baby?
No,
Why not?
because she wasn't performing any care, and I didn't feel I needed to have those memories.
So you chose not to look at the child?
Correct.
What happened next?
Toni said I should just console the parents. So I turned around and they were standing right outside of the bedroom. And I went up to them and told them I was sorry and what had happened. And she said that the baby was fine last night at 9:30 when I fed him. I said him, and he said, yes, Sterling. I said, do you mean this morning? And she said, I don't know.
Now, I want to go through that a little bit again. So you walked out of the apartment, correct?
Out of the bedroom,
Excuse me, out of the bedroom. And where were the parents physically located?
right outside the bedroom.
Okay. And so you were asked to console the parents, and you
Yes.
attempted to do that, correct?
Yes.
How was Cheyanne Harris, her emotional state when you talked to her?
None. There was no tears. There were no... no emotion.
And how close to the bedroom where Sterling lay in the swing was she at the time?
Not very close. Very close. It's a very small apartment.
Still a distance where you could smell Sterling?
Yes.
Did that reaction seem strange to you?
Yes.
Why?
Overruled, you may answer.
She should have been crying and screaming and upset.
And you asked her what had happened, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you say that she told you the baby was fine, she fed him last night at 9:30?
Correct.
And you said something in response to that?
I said, you mean this morning at 9:30? I said a 4-month-old would have needed to be fed sooner than that.
And what did she respond to that?
Nothing.
When you were talking to the parents, had law enforcement arrived yet?
Yes. Then Reed Palo came in and he took them in the bedroom, the other bedroom across from where the baby was.
And what did you do at that point?
I left
Why did you leave?
because I wasn't feeling too good.
Where did you go after you left?
Went out on my route.
Did you stop?
Yes,
Why?
because I had to throw up.
And why did you throw up?
Because it was so sad. And had I known that child was there, all that time, every day I drove by, I could have done something. And that day I was just too late, and I couldn't do anything.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is this good? Okay, thank you. Ma'am, just briefly, you were kind of in and out of the apartment, is that right? Just quickly in and then told to go console the parents?
I was in the apartment, went into the bedroom, went out of the bedroom, and then left the apartment to go home.
And you had had you ever met Miss Harris before?
No.
Okay. When you did ask her when the last feeding was, she ultimately said she didn't know. Is that fair?
The second time.
Right. And you had an opportunity to speak with Reed Palo, is that correct?
He took them in the bedroom.
But you had an opportunity to speak with him. He actually interviewed you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that interview, I believe, was recorded?
Yes.
And when you were talking to Mr. Palo about that lack of emotion, did you tell Mr. Palo that you were not sure if the mother was depressed or on drugs or what?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Redirect?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Lawbreaker, you may step down. Next witness.
State will call Deputy Jason Russell.
Raise your right hand. You promise testimony about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Have a seat.
Thank you. Sir, if you could please state your first and last name and spell them both for the record.
My name is Deputy Jason Russell. It's Jason. My last name is Rosol.
And sir, it's probably obvious from your attire today, but what's your profession?
I'm a Chickasaw County deputy.
And can you tell the jury your educational background that qualifies you to be a deputy sheriff?
I have a 2-year degree from Hawkeye Community College in Waterloo. Before that time, I was in the military, and prior to getting my degree, I did hours and hours of ride-along with the Iowa State Patrol, Chickasaw County, and Nashville Police Department.
And can you tell the jury, did you graduate from the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy?
I did.
And when did you do that?
I graduated I was hired in Nashville on February 27th, would have been 2011. And so it would have been August, I believe, after that.
And what is the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy?
That's a standardized academy that trains us officers and certifies us in different things that we need to know. It teaches us the knowledge, different techniques that we need to use. Basically, it prepares us for things that we might see on the job, the basic level.
And you are a certified peace officer here in the state of Iowa?
Yes, I am.
And you mentioned before that you had some military training as well. Can you describe for the jury what branch you served in and kind of your service in the military?
I was in the United States Navy. I was stationed in San Diego. I started in the supply chain. Basically, I was a storeroom clerk. I hated that, and so I transitioned into policing. And of course, right after I transitioned and started to like the job, my wife got pregnant, gave me the ultimatum, and I got out.
Were you honorably discharged?
I was.
And so how many total years experience do you have in law enforcement?
Total years in law enforcement, again, my start date was February 27, 2011, so right around 8 years, or a little under.
Now, back on August 30th, 2017, were you assigned a particular shift as a deputy sheriff?
Yes, that day I was working a day shift. At that time we worked a 6-3 schedule, 6 days in a row, 3 days off, and I was assigned a day shift, which was the hours of 9 a.m. in the morning till 5:30 p.m. at night.
On August 30th, 2017, how many deputies were on duty in Chickasaw County?
On that particular day, I was what's considered the call car. Basically, I was the car that if any calls came in, I took it. If there was any papers that needed to be served, I did it. I also had two administrators working with me, Sheriff Heeman and Chief Deputy Palo.
So there were 3 of you on duty that day, but you were the one responsible for the calls, correct?
Correct.
So what was the area that you were patrolling or being responsible for that day?
All 505 square miles of Chickasaw County.
Prior to August 30th, 2017, had you ever met the defendant Cheyanne Harris?
No.
How about her live-in boyfriend Zachary Cohn?
No.
Their child Sterling Cohn?
No.
How about their other child, the daughter Nala?
No.
Were you familiar with the community of Alta Vista?
Yes.
Can you kind of describe Alta Vista for the jury, please?
This is a small rural county a town, I guess, on the northwest side of Chickasaw County. Its population is 300 to 400 people. Like I said, it's very rural. Largest town closest to it is New Hampton, which is about the center of our county. So if you think about our county as a square, it's up in the one corner, and the closest big town is in the center.
Is there a local police department in Alta Vista?
There is not.
How about a grocery store or convenience store?
There's I can't remember the name of it, but there's a convenience store gas station.
And is that convenience store and gas station within walking distance of the apartment complex where the defendant lived?
Yes.
Now, you have already testified that on August 30th you were on the day shift as the road deputy, correct?
Yes.
And you were covering all 505 square miles of Chickasaw County, right?
Correct.
Were you dressed that day as you are now in a police uniform?
Exactly.
And was it clear that you were an officer based on your dress?
Yes.
About 12:55 that afternoon on August 30th, 2017, where were you physically located?
I was actually on a previous call. I was on the south side of the county on Highway 63.
And were you dispatched to a call for an infant in distress located at the apartment complex at 107 South Hilltop Avenue in Alta Vista?
Yes, I was. I had been told that there was a 4-month-old that had recently passed.
And can you give the jury an understanding, basically, your physical location, because it's a different county, in relation to where the community of Alta Vista was located?
Yes, as I kind of said, our county is square. Not like your county is more rectangular, ours is more square. Alta Vista is in the northwest corner, so it'd be the upper left corner if you're thinking about it, if you're looking at it. I would have literally been about the other side, the opposite corner on the bottom.
So how far did you have to travel from your location to the call location?
I believe, the county as a whole, I would have been on 300th. So I'm not sure the exact miles off the top of my head, but I would have had to go at least from 300th, you have to count all the way up to 100th Street and go over to west, all the way over to basically it'd be Gilmore. So it'd be anywhere from 14 to 25.
I didn't mean to have you do math.
Right. Obviously, I didn't get a degree in math. But I don't know the exact miles, but I was literally about as far away as I can get in the county.
Okay, and let me ask you a different way. Your report says the call came in about 12:55 and you arrived at the residence about 1:09 p.m. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And I assume that you drove with some pace, correct?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
Because the call had come in as it was a 4-month-old that had recently passed. We've had calls like that in the past, or we've heard about calls like that in the past where sometimes we can hook the AED up to that person, maybe save that person. and maybe take some life-saving preventative steps. I drove what we call 1033, which is lights and sirens, and I went about as fast as I safely could get there.
And when you arrived at the apartment complex, did you park there?
I parked just north of the apartment complex.
Can you kind of describe the apartment complex for the jury?
Yeah, if you think about the, the best way I could describe the apartment complex is it's 3 separate buildings, but they're all part of the same kind of complex. And if you're standing on the north side of the complex looking south towards the buildings, it's basically a backwards U or an N if you're looking at it that way. You have a north-south building on this side, a north-south building on this side, and in the middle is an east-west building.
And which one of the buildings is apartment number 7 located in?
It was in the middle building, the east-west building.
When you arrived at the apartment complex, were other officers there before you?
Yes.
And who was there before you?
Chief Deputy Palo had beat me to the scene.
And when you arrived, what did you do?
As soon as I arrived, I'd seen Chief Deputy Palo's truck. So I called out my location, told dispatch I was on scene, and immediately went towards that building.
And did you go inside the apartment?
I met a male individual who I knew to be the fire chief, Kevin Hupka, and I wasn't sure. I knew the building, but I didn't know which exact apartment was, because there's 4 apartments in each building. And so he had told me which apartment to go to.
So he directed you to the apartment number 7?
Yes.
What did you do next?
Then I went, from there I went into the building and then entered the apartment.
When you went into the apartment, what did you see?
As I entered the apartment, I guess the first thing I noticed is you walk right into the living room area, and there's a kitchen off to the right. I remember thinking it was kind of dirty, but there was a kid's video playing on the TV that had ended, so it kept going on repeat, the end credit, kind of like the repeat the video type deal. And then I remember seeing our ambulance personnel, Jeremy McGrath, and first responder, I guess our medical examiner at that time was Toni Friedrich.
Did you ask where the baby was located?
I did.
And were you directed to where the baby was located?
Yes. They directed me to the back bedroom.
And did you go into that back bedroom?
I did.
Can you kind of describe what you could see when you were in the doorway of that back bedroom looking into the bedroom?
If you, if you opened the door and didn't enter the bedroom, the door would swing to the left. And there was adult size, I call it adult size because I don't know if it's a full or a queen mattress that was on the wall that would be right on the left side. That wall would have been the same wall that separated what we call the master bedroom and this bedroom that the child was in. There was a car seat laying there, a bouncy swing. There was lots of clothes piled up. I saw diapers, blankets, and then in the corner, facing the corner, was a swing with the baby in it.
When you said you saw diapers, can you describe what you meant by that?
Yeah, I've got 4 children of my own, so I've had baby showers, and these were like the diapers that you get at a baby shower. They do them as baby cake, or when they roll them up and put a rubber band on them. Those were the diapers that I saw, newborn diapers.
And that was the size they were, was newborn diaper size?
Yes, they were.
And so would these have been clean diapers or soiled or dirty diapers?
They were clean diapers.
And they had rubber bands around them?
Yes, they did.
Did you enter the room?
Yes, I did.
Why did you do that?
To start the investigation.
And as you entered the room, can you kind of describe for the jury how the room felt as far as air temperature and air movement?
Well, first, I'm sorry. Can I have something to drink, maybe?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
You have water down there?
How do you think, sir?
I'm fighting a cold. I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm not going to touch your hand right here.
Yeah, don't. Just set it right there. Thanks.
Let me just repeat the question for you, officer, okay? So when you entered the room, if you could just describe for the jury how it felt as far as air temperature and air movement.
The first thing I remember, even when I just opened the door, was thinking that this room, the heat was on, or that it was warmer, hotter than the rest of the apartment. The other thing I noticed immediately was the strong odor of human urine. I also noticed there was a big heavy quilt blocking the window or on the window, so even if the window would have been open for air movement, it wouldn't have been able to get through that quilt. It was a thick quilt. There was no fan in that room. There was no air movement at all. But I didn't take the temperature, but it felt probably 10 degrees hotter in that room.
And when you say 10 degrees hotter, do you mean 10 degrees hotter than the rooms you had to walk through to get there?
Correct.
So the rest of the apartment was cooler than the room where Sterling was found?
Much.
And you mentioned that there was no fan in the room, is that correct?
Correct.
Was there an overhead light?
Yes.
Did the overhead light contain any type of fan on it?
It did not.
How about a box fan? Was there any box fan in that room?
There was not.
And so you mentioned when you walked in the room, you smelled a strong smell of urine, correct?
Yes.
Did you notice anything else as far as smells when you walked into the room?
When I got closer to baby and got down on his level, he's about 1.5 feet, 2 foot off the ground in that swing, I could smell, again, what I can only describe, because I've done this for years, as death. It's the smell of the body doing what the body does when someone's gone. That smell was stronger, of course, as I got closer. But I remember thinking that I could smell something fruity, or almost like air freshener like. And at first I didn't realize what it was.
And did you ultimately realize what that fruity or smell was?
Yeah, right underneath the swing, or kind of off to the side, but right underneath the swing was these air freshener melts that you put in a candle, and they melt, and the scentsies, and they put a scent in the room.
Now, when you talked about the smell that you smelled of urine when you entered the room, would it be, based on what you smelled that day, would it be obvious to anybody that entered that room that it smelled of urine and the other things you've described?
Yes.
Was it a strong smell?
Yeah, it was absolutely the strongest human urine smell I've ever smelled.
Now, you've talked about what you smelled and what you felt as far as the air temperature. I want to next talk about what you saw when you approached the swing where Sterling was located, okay?
Okay.
Can you describe what you saw as you approached the swing, and kind of describe for the jury how you approached the swing?
So, as I said, the door was kind of off to the side of the room a little bit, so when it swung open, you would have saw him in that corner, kind of off to the right. He would have been facing the corner there to the right. The room was such a mess that there was stuff stacked on top of the car seat, stuff stacked on top of the bouncer. There was clothes piled up to the what would be the right of me, behind the swing. So I just basically followed the path that was there to baby, and then there was a small space between the wall and in front of baby, and I got in front of baby.
And as you got in front of baby, how was that smell?
It was much, much stronger as I got in front of baby. When I got in front of baby, I touched baby and then moved a blanket. The reason I moved the blanket, I remember, was because there's a blue pair of pants underneath the swing. And I thought, I wanted to make sure he had been clothed or diapered on the bottom half. And as I moved that blanket, that smell was so bad that I had to hold my breath. It was the most strong ammonia smell I'd ever smelled.
Now, can you describe what Sterling appeared to look like when you saw him?
Yes. Sterling, his eyes were open. He had bright blue eyes. and his head was tilted to the left. He had slid down in the swing a little bit. He wasn't hanging off of the swing, but he had slid down in the swing. He was wearing a blue top. I don't know if it was a onesie because I never got down that far, but it was a blue top. I do know he did have pants on. They were Army type pants. He did have some blood or body fluids on his blue top that had come out his nose and his mouth. His little hands were clenched, and they were in a fist, and they were kind of up by his face.
Did you notice anything about his size?
The first thing I thought was, as I said, I have 4 children of my own, and one is actually about the same size, the same age as Sterling. And so when I was dealing with Sterling, I thought that our dispatcher had made a mistake, maybe or been told the wrong information. My 4-month-old didn't look like this one. He was very small, very skinny, sickly, very, very small.
Now, you mentioned you have experience with children yourself, correct?
Yes.
And you have 4 children?
Yes.
And one is about the same age as Sterling?
Yes.
Were you familiar with the swing that Sterling was seated in?
I actually had the exact same model of swing and bouncy chair.
And did you use that swing with your own 4-month-old?
Yes, I did.
Now, can you describe that swing for the jury?
That's an electric swing. It's got 3 different features on it. It has of course, it has the swing, so that it could swing. The swing could do both side to side and front to back, so you could rotate baby. It also has a mobile, so baby could look at something, and the mobile would move. It also played music.
Now, when you looked at that swing when you were back in that back bedroom with Sterling, was the swing on or activated? The main motor switch, which has to be on for any of those other features to work, was on, and the green light was on. And was the swing moving?
The swing was not moving.
Was it playing any music?
No.
Is it possible for the swing to be on, based on your experience with the swing, and not move or play music?
Yes.
Can you describe that for the jury?
Basically, it's just a toggle switch on the top, and you can turn it off or on. A lot of parents will turn it on, and they'll turn the music on and let the child fall asleep, and then after a short time, the music will shut off or what have you. Again, you can always turn that on or off, but it's a toggle switch on top.
And I assume that this is a swing that has to be plugged in?
Yes.
So there was a plug there?
Yes.
When you looked at Sterling, did you notice any signs of any visible injuries to his body?
I of course, noticed the blood, or what I assume to be blood, coming out of his mouth and nose. I noticed that he had some on his hand, which I figured was from him putting his hand in his mouth. I noticed on multiple parts of his body there was brown. I didn't know at that time if it was bruising or what it might have been from, but it had basically, his skin was stained. After looking at it a while and messing with feeling the chair and going through the things, I realized the chair was soaked in urine, and that the stain was probably caused by that.
I want to ask about you and your interaction with Sterling with your hands, okay? You've talked about touching the blanket. Did you touch Sterling's body as well?
I did.
And why did you do that?
As a first responder in a rural county, it takes a while sometimes for other personnel to get there. I'm not a medical examiner or anything, but we're trained to look for certain things. Rigor mortis is one of those. If we feel like the subject has been gone for a while, we'll check for rigor mortis, which is basically the body is stiffened, the muscles are tense and rigid. There might be some bruising sometimes. Again, I'm not a doctor or anything, but we're just basically trained in the basic knowledge of that. I can't tell you the time of death or anything like that.
What did Sterling's body feel like when you touched it?
It was cold and stiff, rigor had set.
And you've described how Sterling was positioned on the swing and kind of how he was clothed, correct?
Yes,
Did you touch his clothing?
I did.
And why did you do that?
As I stated, I didn't know the call that came in that he had recently passed, and what I was looking at, that wasn't right. That was wrong. He had not recently passed, and so I touched his underneath his collar where the blood and body fluids were to see, number one, if it was stiff or still wet, soft to the touch, or if I could try to get some sort of idea on how long that had been there.
And when you touched his body, how did the clothing, let me start over. When you touched his shirt and his clothing, how did the shirt feel first?
It was stiff.
And what do you mean?
If I touched him right underneath the chin, and the whole collar shifted where that body fluid was. It had dried, had been there a while.
And his body was covered by a blanket, right? At least part of his body.
Yes.
What part of his body?
It would have been the lower part of his body.
And did you touch and move that blanket?
I did.
And you were looking for whether or not he had pants on, correct?
Right. As I stated, there was a blanket and some blue pants that would have fit Sterling directly underneath the swing. And so I thought I should check and see if he was diapered and clothed from the bottom side. And so I moved the blanket a little bit to see if that was the case.
And when you touched the blanket, what observations did you make of the blanket?
The first thing I noticed is that the blanket was soaked in urine or body fluids. It was completely wet. I mean, it was vile. The smell. And as I moved the blanket, that smell just got worse.
Did you see anything come out from under the blanket or off the blanket or from around the blanket when you touched it?
Yes, I did.
What did you see?
Growing up in Iowa, I've always called them gnats. You have bananas or apples out on your counter, and you'll get these fruit flies, or I call them gnats, that'll come around, and that's what flew out from underneath the blanket.
And where did the flies go after they came out from under the blanket?
They went up by his face and then out in the room.
And I want to talk just in a few moments before lunch, unless you want me to stop now, Your Honor.
It's a good place.
It's a good place.
All right. Why don't we take our lunch break at
Okay.
this time? Because of the cold weather, let's take a little extra time. We'll resume at 1:10. Ladies and gentlemen, please continue to heed my admonition. Do not do any research on your own. Do not watch the news over the noon hour. Don't go on the internet and research anything associated with this case. As I've said before, if you do so, you would be denying Ms. Harris a fair trial. So we'll see you at 1:10. Be safe.